Well, good evening. I'm Arundel County Executive Stuart Pittman, and I'm here with three of my favorite public servants, who I will introduce in a moment. But our topic for Build Back Better this evening is National Night In. The reason is that last week when we were planning to do this show, it was what would have been National Night Out had we not had a pandemic. That got pushed back. And then we had a tropical storm, which meant that our National Night In had to be pushed back. And that's kind of what we're talking about tonight, is that we're in a time where lots of things are happening that seem to be turning our world upside down. And we want to check in with our police chief, our fire chief, and the director of our Office of Emergency Management to hear from them what all this means, what their departments are doing, what they're hearing, what the trends are in terms of crime and crises and disasters, and what it means that we're in the middle of a pandemic and it's hurricane season, and how Anne Arundel County government is planning for all of this, protecting our residents, and listening to them and getting them engaged in the work that these departments do. So it's I say they're some of my favorite public servants because I happen to like all three of you, but I love the work that all of your departments are doing. We're going to start with Preeti Emmerich, who's the Director of Emergency Operations. Then we're going to move to Trish Wolford, who's our Fire Chief. And then we're going to move to Bill Lowry, who is our acting police chief, who stepped in it's been about 2 weeks. Been a active 2 weeks. Unfortunately, I guess we could say there's been a lot going on. So this will be an opportunity for Chief Lowry to speak to the community and hear from you. I've got some questions that people emailed in advance of this and comments. And then those of you who comment on Facebook on the live stream, we've got somebody who's going to be forwarding some of that onto my screen so that as we get to the end, we can make sure that that some of that is included and some of your questions are brought up. So our topic is really what your three agencies are doing for the residents of the county, but particularly in this time, in the middle of a global pandemic and hurricane season and a movement for racial justice and before a national election. It's a really uncertain time for a lot of people. A lot is up in the air, and we're a community that's also somewhat divided. And if people are like me, I think we want a sense that somebody's really keeping track of what's going on, protecting people, and planning for the Build Back Better, for the rebuilding, putting all the pieces back together at the end of this uncertain time. So let's start with you, Preeti Emmerich, who is our Director of Emergency Operations, who came on about a year ago, you can correct me if I'm wrong, to be the number 2 in the office. I think the number 1 at the time, who was getting ready to resign, hired her because he knew that she could be number 1. And we took a little bit of time at the beginning of the pandemic. We didn't want a new person. Preeti was number 2. She absolutely proved herself to everybody, and now she's running the show there, doing the planning for the future, and has been a great leader in this time. So welcome, Preeti.
Thank you. You know, it's felt like a year, I guess. I actually came on in January 2020.
Oh.
Thank you, County Executive. With the Office of Emergency Management, I just wanted to give a brief overview of what we do and then how that has changed a little bit during the pandemic. So the Office of Emergency Management, we make sure that the public and the county agencies are prepared for any kind of disaster that might come about. And we do this in a couple of areas. Number 1 is mitigation. Before the disaster actually happens, finding ways to protect the community through infrastructure before the disaster comes so that we can lessen the impact. Through preparedness, we have lots of plans. I know you've seen a lot of those plans, anything from how to shelter people, how to get communities prepared. We have a community preparedness guide on how to create community plans.
I've got to say, I've seen the plans. Most of the people out there have not seen them. They're thick and there are lots and lots of words. and they don't really make a lot of sense until a tropical storm comes along and you see it getting implemented. But there's lots of words.
Our emergency operations plan is available on our website, the county's emergency operations plan. And then we have the response factor. So that's where our emergency operations center comes into play. So that's where we have the interagency coordination for our response, for resource management, for information sharing. And then lastly, but not the least importantly, is recovery. So recovery comes in many forms, whether we're talking about a tropical storm that might hit, whether we have to recover for buildings, and especially with the infrastructure, or in a pandemic, which is ongoing for several months. And with the recovery, we have to make sure that we're trying to build back Anne Arundel better through all the stages of what a pandemic might happen. And, segueing into the pandemic, a lot of it has changed in how the Office of Emergency Management definitely has been involved in some of the areas, and especially has leaned forward in some of the community matters. Some of the things I want to highlight that the Office of Emergency Management has been involved with is number one, food insecurity issues. I think with the pandemic, we've seen, economic harm, a lot of families that have been put into poverty, and dealing with the food insecurity issues has been a priority for the Office of Emergency Management in coordination with a lot of county agencies, whether we're dealing with the food access line, with food deliveries, assisting in the food bank. We want to make sure that the community is protected as best as we can during this pandemic. Assisting other vulnerable populations. When you think about pandemics, telling people to stay home, populations like the homeless can't stay home. So how do we protect a population like that? And that's something we've been coordinating with our Department of Social Services and other health and human services agencies in order to make plans to keep them protected. One of the things I am most proud of for Anne Arundel County, but also for our county government, is the volunteers. Anne Arundel County, the community sense of volunteering for people in need is great. And it's really a shining example of how we can come together to help people in need. And I just want to list a few of the things that we have accomplished through the help of the community. So help in food pantries, especially with the Anne Arundel County Food Bank and all the pop-up food pantries that have come about to help the community in need. Homemade masks. We have a ton of volunteer groups who make 500 masks per week for a lot of the community members that need them, that can't buy masks on their own or it's hard to obtain. Contact tracing. We have a ton of emails that come into our email address, oem@aacounty.org, that offer their services to call people to help in our public health needs. Also, during the pandemic, special events that come up, the 2020 census, there are volunteers who are willing to go out into the community to help where there is a need to do so. One of the community volunteer agencies that I'd like to give a shout out to is our community emergency response teams that are affiliated with the Office of Emergency Management that has really come and helped, specifically the Office of Emergency Management and our Emergency Operations Center. And they have assisted us with call taking, with traffic management for our food drives. They helped us with our Donations Management Center when that was up and running earlier. And again, they are always willing to help us and to help the community. If you look on our social media page, there'll be information, obviously, on how to join the Community Emergency Response Team for anybody who is interested in continuing the work. So
let me just say something too about the volunteer aspect, because when the pandemic, we knew it was coming. We hadn't had a case yet. We had a cabinet meeting up at the Office of Emergency Management, which, if people don't know, it's in Glen Burnie, right at the town center there. And it's also in the same building where our Anne Arundel Community Television TV station is, which is great, the studio there. And so we had that cabinet meeting. It turned out that our first case was diagnosed that day, so we had to do a press conference as well. And then we continued to go there and do these town halls, these virtual town halls, and we were doing them weekly with the health officer from your office. And I just remember at that point we had the the call center set up. And we had, I don't know, 10 or 12 callers taking calls. There were people from all over county government. A lot of the police cadets were spending time there. And a lot of the calls in the beginning were people who wanted to volunteer and they were looking for a way. And you set up the donation center, and then Rec and Park set up the trailers at the parks for people to donate. And there was a real, as there always is, I think, in any kind of a disaster or a crisis, there are thousands of people who really want to help and contribute. So that really is a really important part of what you do, is coordinating that effort. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. And we still have volunteers who are willing to help out, even though there's a reopening, businesses are going back, but still the heart of the Anne Arundel community is seeking to help out people in need.
And when you come in and you volunteer at the Office of Emergency Management, they always have plenty of snacks. And so I was up there a lot in the beginning, and I have twin 10-year-old boys, and I would take snacks home from there for them. And they discovered those little cereal boxes, Fruit Loops, all the sweet cereal we don't buy. I was bringing them. And then I brought them home Pop-Tarts, and they have become Pop-Tart fans. And my wife really doesn't like Pop-Tarts in the house, but I sneak them into the house. So it's a bad place to go, if you're trying to become healthy, but it's a great place to go for snacks.
We are very nice. Example, snacks. Look at that. So
yeah, no, it's a real community there. It's great.
It is. And, I'm very proud to be working with this county, for this county. But, as the pandemic continues, there are things that happen every day things that I'm sure our fire chief and police chief will talk about. There's hurricane season. Hurricane season doesn't stop because there's a pandemic, as demonstrated by last week. And so we really want to put the focus on preparing the community for hurricane safety. So I just want to announce that the Office of Emergency Management in Anne Arundel County has designated next week as Hurricane Preparedness Week, August 17th through the 22nd. We're going to be having a lot of media stuff that's happening on our social media pages, a lot of messaging, a lot of information on how to prepare for hurricane season, some talks with our staff. We have a meteorologist on staff. I don't think a lot of people know that. We can really talk about hurricanes and the impacts on the community. I also want to say that we are ready to give presentations to community members, to businesses, to nonprofits on hurricane preparedness during the pandemic era. We call it Hurridemic presentations. And if you email oem@aacounty.org, we could more than happy to set up a presentation virtually, so to keep everybody safe. So even as the business of the pandemic continues, we're still looking out for other disasters or anything else that might happen, and to keep Anne Arundel County safe.
Thank you. And I also have to add that the coordinating role that you play among the county agencies is really important. So it's important that on all of our emergency plans, every county agency has to sign off and say, yes, we're willing to play our part. If you go into the Emergency Operations Center, you'll see spots along long tables for each department and phones. Now, you've had to change that when we mobilized for for this tropical storm. A lot of it was done virtually because we couldn't put a lot of people into the same room. So it wasn't designed for a pandemic, but that's kind of the way it operates. And so your coordinating role is important. And the plan that you've put together that we're just finalizing and bringing folks together for recovery. There's always a recovery from any disaster. Most disasters take place over a short period of time, but there's a model for that. And you're applying that to the coronavirus pandemic and engaging all of the departments and all of the stakeholders in the community around rebuilding from everything that's been lost in this pandemic. So thank you for all of that. And I have to say that when I came in a year and a half or so ago, it was before you were there, but I got my tour of the Emergency Operations Center, and I was given these plans that were a little bit behind. We need to do some catch up to get them all approved and sent into the state. But I personally have always felt as though this is something that I don't know when it's going to be important, but this is really important. And I don't know if that comes from I grew up in a household where my dad was the guy who did bomb shelters for nuclear war, and in the Kennedy administration during the Cold War, and I would hear stories. I was just a little kid at that time, but I would hear stories about the work that he did and how people would kind of roll their eyes about it and say it's never going to happen. And the great thing is that never did happen. But being prepared is it's everything. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
And a big part of that falls on the police department. In fact, I think on the fire department, sorry. There was a time where the Office of Emergency Management didn't actually have a permanent director. It was a rotating thing, and it mostly came from the fire department, right, to run that center. And so there's always been a really close relationship there. And I know things in the fire department have been different as a result of the pandemic. And so Trish Wolford is got that story for us. How's it been going over there, Chief Wolford?
It's been good. They've been doing well. The firefighters are doing good, and adapting to change, just like everybody. And if there's one that Preeti talks about being prepared, that's essentially make sure we are prepared for the pandemic, the tropical storm, the medical call, the house fire, the whatever it's going to be. So they've been doing really well, and I'm extremely proud of the department. So just a quick little background for those that aren't familiar with the county fire department. 31 fire stations. This is a combination fire department, which means we have career members and volunteer members. So it's a very strong, active, community-driven force, which is something I absolutely love. So with that, there's almost 1,500 firefighters that function, and that's the combination of that career and volunteer. And, I'm in great company on the screen, because if we talk about the three-legged stool of public safety, it's the fire department, the police department, and emergency management. That's really what makes the world go round when it comes to public safety. So working together. Through the pandemic, there's things that have changed for us when it comes to medical protocols. I will say we don't normally find the positives in things like this, and none of us have experienced something to this magnitude. But some of the positives are just the advancements that have occurred in our industry, in medical protocols that we're able to work through and try right now. Our medical directors working throughout the state together, and the camaraderie that comes with this. There are things that we had to pivot and turn on extremely quickly that maybe we wouldn't have done so quickly in the past. So if we look at the positives, that might be the best thing that we can do in that positive manner. The other things we're really working hard on, and probably some of the things we miss the most, are the community engagement pieces. And the community engagement, being out there, meeting with neighborhood association, doing touch a truck for the kids and friendly friendliness. And so we're trying to do that visually. I'm making sure, do I still have a good connection with everyone? Nodding, so
it's a little spotty.
Must be a yes.
We can hear you, but
Yeah, so I'm getting all the text messages now that say you're frozen.
Yeah, usually your voice is working, but your face is frozen. So the connection must be. We can hear your voice. We're good though.
Okay, well, if you can hear our voice, I can see Bill laughing now because he was frozen too. All right, thank you for all the text messages, for everybody that sent those. I hope my face was frozen in a decent look. That never happens.
No, never.
I'll just continue with the audio and we'll go from there as it works itself out. Um, and, and I'll be quick about it because
Yeah, you're frozen right.
Yeah.
You're frozen right now with your mouth open, and you look really.
So some of the things we're continuing to work on is obviously a lot of virtual, and we have a little series.
There you go.
How,
Okay, she didn't like
how's
that.
it looking now?
That's a little better. It's good we can laugh, you know. We don't have advertisers that we have to please here. We're just, you know, we're just Zooming. Okay, now you seem to be all right.
So maybe, is it working? Oh, good. Then I'm just gonna say like two quick things before it goes away.
Okay.
Unless it already went away.
Sort of. You're frozen again, but now your eyes are popping out of your head. You look great. You look great.
Come back.
Keep talking.
You are never going to live this down.
Pretty trying to be nice. Should we go to police and come back?
Sure. If you think that there's something you can switch around to make it work better, yeah, let's go to police. Yeah. All right. We'll come back to fire, and maybe you know, we can figure something out on that end. So yes, we have Chief Bill Lowry, who I have to say that you know, it's always tough to step in you know, after a resignation to provide leadership, and then at a time where people are marching in the streets, demanding increased transparency, accountability, things that some people think are positive and some people don't support. And I got to say that my view of it, and I know Chief Lowry has expressed the same view, is that every department of county government, every agency, and every police department in the country is always trying to improve. And so we are working on a report on our police department through my office that reviews the policies and the progress that have been made in recent years, as well as plans to improve in the future. And from my own perspective, really for all of government, but this includes police, is that transparency and community engagement are the key, and trust is the goal. That's the only way government works, and it's the only way policing works in particular. So, but before we get into any of that, how are things going out on the streets of Anne Arundel County? Your people are the ones that are the front line of government, and really know how people are feeling and what's going on in the communities.
Yes, sir. Mr. Pittman, thanks a lot. First of all, since most folks probably don't know me, I'm going to give a real quick snippet about myself, and then I want to talk about how the COVID-19 has impacted policing and law enforcement and public safety in Anne Arundel County from a police perspective. So I started my law enforcement career 47 years ago. I was with Prince George's County Police for about 27 years. I worked for NASA at the headquarters level for about 7 years. I worked for the National Football League, for the Washington football team, and for the Miami Dolphins, running their security and emergency preparedness. So Preeti, you and I have a lot in common. I was the chief of police for 2 municipal agencies in Prince George's County at the same time. That was a unique experience. I learned a lot about policing in general. So I've been married for 47 years. I have 3 sons, 3 daughters. I consider them daughters, not daughters-in-laws, and 5 grandchildren. I love this job. I'm a very simple man. I love 3 things. I love my Lord. I love this job, my profession, and I love my family. And I try to keep those things in perspective. So that's a quick, about a minute.
I think you might want to, before you go home, put the family from 3 to 2.
Yeah, well, my wife, who's the love of my life, I don't know if she's listening or not, but I tell her every day. she keeps me straight on that. She tries to make sure those priorities are where they need to be. So, folks, that's really me in a nutshell. I love this job. I love public safety. This is a position of trust, as the county executive has talked about. So how has the COVID affected your police department? I think one of the main things is we haven't been able to engage the community as much as we would like to have been, and that has to do with that trust issue. So from our school resources officers who have lost that ability to contact with our youth, our youth activities, even playing basketball with kids, our limited contact with the general public. I mean, because police officers are really good at watching people. And we can see it in people's eyes. We can see, especially when they're wearing masks, we can see this uncertainty that's in their eyes. We've missed out on a lot of community meetings. And again, that's that trust issue that we try to build every day. This has added stress to our police officers. Our police officers, not only are they dealing with the COVID in their contacts, but then they go home and they have to worry about their family members. But things like field training officers, when a recruit graduates from the academy, they have to ride with a field training officer. So even that small interaction there, the extra safety precautions, and we have a great relationship with our health department, but a police officer learning to wear masks and gloves and aprons and goggles and all of those things that we're not normally accustomed to wearing. Managing the exposures at our platoon level on squads. I mean, that was a big concern. And I have to give kudos to our command staff, our commanders, especially the mitigation efforts that we've been able to take place. Right now, we only have one officer in quarantine right now. And so we've done a really, I think, good job. But what that does, it impacts our ability to interact with the community when we're in this COVID environment. Our police academy, the recruits, that was halted for 9 weeks. We were able to do some e-learning, but just things like that, our out-of-state travel, all of these things that are so important to us. We've responded to over 1,200 calls for service, whether it's from the citizens, of community leaders, about the potential violations from the executive orders. But I will say, even in that, our primary focus was an education process, was educating people. What we would give them brochures in English and in Spanish. The officers were equipped with masks that they could hand out, but zero arrests. And I really need to emphasize that, is that our primary focus when we were dealing with the community was to educate them and try to keep them safe. So we have a program called Youth Activities Program, YAP.
No, I have to say on the COVID violation stuff that I can attest that there were a lot of conversations about how to do enforcement, and there were some people who wanted people to get fined and people to be punished and set examples, and there were other people who didn't. And the police department position was always, please, less is better. We don't want to be in that position. We want to be educating people and encouraging them, but we'd really rather not be putting people in jail for violations of that executive order. And I felt the same way. And it's been great that our community has really responded and worn their masks and done their social distancing without any heavy-handed techniques. So yes, thank you for maintaining that position.
And all those kudos go to our patrol officers. And they're the ones on the front lines, and they realize that it's kind of counterproductive. We want to educate people, we want to help them, but last thing we want to do is to charge somebody on a violation with this. If it was necessary, we'd have done it, but we're very, very pleased with that. So that's kind of the how it's impacted us globally on the police department. So what does it look like from a community relations perspective? So again, I've only been here, Chief Altamari brought me on in June of last year. So I'm still going through a learning process, although I was here in 2013 and 14 for a year as the assistant chief. But I just like the folks, and we're going to be tweeting some of this information on our Twitter and also on our Facebook account. But just give me 30 seconds, and I'd like to go down a list of the things, because sometimes the police departments don't do a real good job of educating the public and letting folks know what we do. So just dealing with community relations. We have Coffee with a Cop, pop-up camps for children, Shop with a Cop, Lunch buddies, that's where we actually, we will have lunch with a particular grade in our elementary schools. Lifeline 100, which is a bicycle education and community engagement. Officer Chase, it's a radio controlled little deal that we take to the children and it interacts with them. Soapbox derbies, reading across America, toys for tots. I'm almost finished. Bike rodeos, trunk or treat, national night out, which we couldn't have here. We take children on basketball trips, baseball games, football games. We have packed officers, our police and community together officers. There's two at each district. Our crisis intervention camp, which, and I'm not ashamed to say this, I'm a pretty emotional guy. So I saw that camp last year where the folks from our community relations and our crisis intervention team were dealing with youth who had been involved in suicidal issues. And in 1 week, they took those children from where they wouldn't talk at all to the end of that camp, and they were talking with the police officers on a first name basis. And the chief and I and Deputy Chief Flemings, I'm not ashamed to say this, we walked away from there and there wasn't a dry eye between the three of us. So folks, what I'm trying to say is that our police department loves you. We wouldn't do this job if we didn't care about people and didn't love them. I love the opportunity to come back here and to be involved with this police department. We are head and shoulders above other police agencies that I'm very, very familiar with. And like I said, I've been doing this for 47 years. But as the county executive said, that doesn't mean that there's not room for improvement. There's no such thing as status quo in public safety. Either you're digressing or you're moving forward. And our police department is going to move forward. I look at all the things that are taking place, and I'm almost done. I look at all the things that are taking place on a national level. I look at these as opportunities. I really do, and I've told that to all of our captains and all of our commanders and all of our police officers. So it's an honor to be in this acting position. It's an honor to be a member of this police department, and it's an honor to serve our community as the chief of police for the Anne Arundel County Police Department. I love you guys.
Thank you, Chief. And it's an honor to have you as our chief. You know, we sat down and got to know each other a little bit when you came in. I had met you and talked to you quite a bit before, and I was always impressed with how eager you were to embrace anything new. You're going to oversee the implementation of the biggest transparency project in Anne Arundel County government right now, which is going to be body-worn cameras on police officers.
Yes, sir.
And so and I know that our officers are embracing that because they're proud of what they do, and that way their work is transparent, it's visible.
Yes, sir.
And all the community engagement work that you do, which is I understand as you read through that list of programs and activities, a lot of them can't take place right now, which is frustrating, I know. But that will come back, and that will and we're looking at ways of making it even more transparent. I think some people think that when a citizen complaint is filed, it just disappears in a file somewhere. We want people to be able to see what happens and trust that the process is accountable to the residents of this county, which it has to be. So we'll make progress on all of that. And you did, like you said, you were here for a couple of years under Chief Davis, and a lot of the things that were implemented that you talked about started during that time. So we're glad to have you now, and I know that both community leaders and people in the department, I've met with the command staff a number of times recently, support what you're doing, and have a lot of respect for you, which is absolutely essential in your job. So thank you. Yes.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes.
Always that one more thing. Again, sometimes we don't do a good job with the police department of not selling, but of branding what we do, of telling folks a lot of the positive things. We average about 450,000 calls for service a year in Anne Arundel County, about 450,000 calls. Now that's not just the interactions that a normal police officer would have, but almost 98% of those calls do not involve any type of arrest protocol. Almost 98%. So the arrest procedures that we're involved in is a very small minutia of what public safety officials do, especially in the law enforcement community. Because I just think the public needs to know that there's almost a 500,000 calls for service a year, and it's a very small interaction that actually involves an arrest procedure.
And while we're doing the one more thing, one more thing coming from, which is, I mean, let's recognize that race is an important issue within the police department. Absolutely. And that racism is an issue throughout our county and every department of county government that we're working to eradicate and create more diversity and inclusion and equity throughout county government. And I know that our department has been a little whiter than the community, and particularly at the top, but throughout the ranks. And over the last 5 years, went from about 7% to 14% of Black officers. Right. And there's Black officers group that I've talked to, as well as the Minority Affairs Committee of the Fraternal Order of Police, and heard a lot of what they have to say about the department and the progress that it's making. But a lot of that is recruitment and you know, who we start out with in the academy. So we have an academy class coming in, and 50% minority, is that right?
Yes, sir. We have an academy class starting in September of this year. Probably about 47 officers. Now that's an overhire for us, which you've been allowed us to do. It keeps up the attrition rate because we lose about 4.1 officers per month. And our academy class, our session right now is about a 9-month academy. So yes, sir. Of that, the participants in that academy class, it's about 50% minorities.
That's good. That's much higher than the population of Anne Arundel County, and so hopefully we can catch up and have a more diverse police department. Now we have our fire chief. Yeah.
And we're not having a problem recruiting either, so that's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people talk about funding for police departments, and then there's a slogan that's defund the police. Although most people who say that say it's really more about funding social services and other things. But I have to say that that's not the direction we've gone in Anne Arundel County. The police officers got a contract this year where our county officers' pay will get to the level of the region finally. Good contract that they got. Same with fire, to get them up to the level of the region. You know, our public safety staff has been underpaid compared to the rest of our region in Central Maryland significantly, and that was a reason why it was difficult to recruit. So now that we've got them up to standard, up to par, that should help with the recruitment issue as well. So I'm sure that's part of the reason. All right. Let's get back to Chief Wolford. I can see you're not frozen anymore. Maybe when you start talking, you'll freeze, but.
No. We've done a full change, a full device change, a network change. I guess if there's one thing that we can say we all are, it's resilient, whether that means on a Zoom meeting or in the field. How am I sounding now? Pretty good? I look good? You wouldn't believe the screenshots and the text messages I'm getting of how horrific. I'm glad everybody is enjoying a good laugh. They're pretty horrific. So, so I just really the most important thing that that I wanted to talk about is really how COVID has hampered our community outreach and how important that piece of public education is necessary. It's vital to our existence, and it's vital to our community engagement. So like all things, we've gone virtual, but there's been some great social media things that have occurred. You know, there's a little series that we put together called Dan the Pub Ed Man, and that's because we have it just rolls off your tongue. Dan the Pub Ed Man. And that's because we have a great public outreach team, and Dan Scotton is one of the team members that joined us. And he's been doing a great job of putting together some of these great, simple facts about fire safety. You know, the other thing with the pandemic is people are home. And when people are home, that means there's a greater opportunity for us to have home accidents, cooking fires, for families that aren't normally usually together in the home, for them to understand a home evacuation or a home escape plan. So really reaching out and doing that. And then some really fun, simple things of really catering to our younger population to talk about what's the difference between an engine and a truck, and to give them a little tour of all the cool equipment that's on a rescue squad. It might not seem like a lot, but when we see some of those comments, it feels like a lot. And one of the things that we're really trying to get out and engage the members in our station to help us do that is because one of the adverse effects we're seeing from the pandemic is the mental health of our personnel. And whether you start to adjust to the level of stress that this takes day in and day out, and you find it to be the norm, it still is a level of stress. They're dealing with, they're the ones that take a potentially positive COVID patient or a positive COVID patient from their home environment to the hospital. And then they wonder, am I bringing it home to my newborn? Am I bringing it home to my wife? And so really trying to work with all the members and keep them safe. You know, this is where the teamwork comes into play, and Preeti's office has been phenomenal. You know, when we say we need another gown or we need a different type of mask, they have just been phenomenal, because I need to make sure that our members are protected so they can go home to their families. If they're not healthy, then we don't have anyone to serve the community. And we know that's the expectation, whether it's the tropical storm or anything else that occurs. We are there 365 days. So the community outreach piece. The other thing with all this occurring during the summer months is water safety. And we continue to touch on this message about, you never know when a medical event will occur. Do you really know how good of a swimmer you are in open water? If you're used to swimming in the pool, it's going to be very different than being out on the Chesapeake Bay or being in some of our waterways. So being safe, understanding boater safety, if you haven't taken a course, to take a course if you're going to operate any type of vessel on the water, to wear a personal flotation device. And just having it is the first step. That's okay. Taking it out of that compartment in the boat and having it with you, or possibly putting it on or upgrading to something that you would really want to wear around your waist when you're paddleboarding or kayaking, so that you do actually wear it because it's not a movement hindrance. So it is a couple of elements of public safety that we like to go through. We're looking forward to getting back out in the community or finding new ways to engage with the community. And we're happy to be here, and we're happy to serve. I can say when I go to the stations and check in with everyone, I'm just incredibly proud that they say, you know, it is what it is, Chief, right? We're just going to roll with it like everybody else, and we're going to do the best we can. And I really can't ask for a better attitude than that. So we're grateful to be doing what we do. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think actually there's feedback from you, Trisha, maybe when one of us is talking. I can hear a little echo, but that's okay. If you want to mute, could you mute Chief Wilford? See if it goes away. Okay, now let's see. All right, it went away, right? Okay. We're just happy we can hear you and see you. So unmute yourself if you have something to say. Okay. No, that was great, and it's true about that attitude, and I've seen it from all over county government, but particularly police and fire. You know, there was, I maybe shouldn't say this because I don't want anybody to ask for it at this point, but there was conversation early on about the question of whether public safety should be getting hazard pay during this time. And nobody knew how long it was going to last. Everybody was looking at these financial projections of revenue declines for local government, which we have seen as well. And there was a question, though, because some jurisdictions actually did hazard pay for public safety employees. And it was interesting to me that our unions didn't push for it. I mean, it may have helped that they were getting some decent contracts. So, but it also told me that what they said was, this is what we signed up for, is hazard. This is public safety. I mean, we're down for this. So thank you to everybody in police, fire, and everybody in public safety that recognizes that you're part of the community, and you know there's not unlimited money, that's for sure. And thank you for your service. So we do have some questions that have come in from email and from Facebook. And as usual, most of them have to do with the police. And so I will throw a few of those out. Please, if anybody has any questions out there relating to emergency management and fire, please send them in and we'll get them as well. And we'll do a few of these. We have a few minutes that we can still go. I might make some up for the other two of you as well. And I'll make up names of who they came from. But let me start. Let me start. Doug has two questions. We have first names, not last. The first, they're related. The first is, how many cadets are enrolled in sessions at the police academy, and how many, and we've already covered this, but we'll say it again, how many are expected to become patrol officers this year? So I guess that was from the last academy that would be in field training. And also, what is the diversity of the upcoming classes?
Yeah, so I'll take the first one. The diversity of the upcoming classes we talked about it is about 50%. And that, I think, I checked on that, it's the highest percentage of minority officers that are going to be in any class that the Anne Arundel County Police Department has ever put on. So
you don't know of that, what percentage? I know that we've had a lot of trouble hiring Hispanic officers, and Asian had more success. African American. What do you know what a breakdown at all?
Yeah, we can put that on our Facebook. I can get the data. I believe the Hispanic Latino is about 12%, which is the highest we've ever had. So yeah, that's an encouraging motion for our police department. And again, that has to do with our recruiters. Our recruiters don't just recruit from within Anne Arundel County. They go out to a myriad of locations, literally hundreds of locations for our recruiters. So, but we'll get the specifics on that, sir, and we'll put that on our website and also on our Twitter. So the cadet program, it's a wonderful program here. We're authorized 10 cadets. It's kind of a mentoring program that kind of gets them affiliated with the agency, gives them the ability to look at law enforcement. In this academy class going in, I'll have to check, but I think we have 2 cadets that are going in. We only presently, we only have 5 of the authorized 10. So we're recruiting for the cadet program. It's a great entry level into public safety. So I'd really like to see that expand. I'd like to see it expand from a 1,500-hour employee to a full-time, but that's another discussion. But it is a great opportunity for young folks to get an introduction into law enforcement. We also have an affiliation with the Anne Arundel County Community College. When you graduate from our police academy, that's 24 credits automatically going towards your AA degree. And we work with Karen Cook at the Anne Arundel County Community College. So I appreciate that question. I love our cadet program. I wish we could get more young folks into in the program itself.
Well, I know Preeti loves it too, because a lot of them have worked in the phone.
I was about to say that the cadets we have worked with are excellent, have been excellent, provided an invaluable service. We're great. We have been singing their praises. So thank you.
Yeah, I love to see how young they are. I mean, I'll be talking about subjects and they'll look at me and they have no clue. When I mention like Perry Como, they look at me like, who? And so I age real quick in front of those young folks, but they're great vitality, great.
Absolutely.
And I just have to say something about our academy, because I've been talking to, leaders in policing around the state a little bit recently, because we're beginning a process of recruiting and all of that. And I'm trying to learn as much as I can about what we need in a police chief. And everybody says that Anne Arundel County's academy is second to none. And that's been my experience from talking to some of the graduates. Chief Wolford went through the academy too, because as a fire inspector, you go through the police academy. But the graduations I've been to, the tone and the message has been so much about public service and so much about treating everybody the same, no matter their background, no matter their upbringing, their race, their country of origin. And then I've talked to some individuals outside of that. I interviewed a group of 3 at one point on a video, and then I've talked to some others where I've run into them that are recent graduates. And the level of enthusiasm as they come out of the academy and they start to actually do their field training, one of them said to me that, you know, I had no idea how many opportunities I would have to help people every single day. And this little kid came up and hugged me and thanked me. And you know, these people come up and thank me for my service. And he said, I would do this even if I weren't getting paid. And I told the Fraternal Order of Police that. They didn't like to hear that. But and another said to me, he said, I want to be the best police officer in Anne Arundel County. And I said, well, what does that mean? And he said, I want every single interaction that I have with a resident to leave that resident feeling better about themselves and about their community, that he wanted to educate people. He's out there every day, you know, helping people. And it's not what I grew up thinking that police officers are trained to do, but it's certainly what is trained in our academy. I even jokingly said at the last graduation that I wish every county employee had to go through the police academy training before they went into their job, whatever it was. And I have a feeling we have trouble all those push-ups and all that. Yeah, no.
I will say, sir, we teach, and not only teach, but you try to live it every day. Every encounter that we have with folks, treat those people as if it's your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, how you would want them to be treated. And that's the honest to goodness truth. And we talk about it daily in here. And Major Katie Goodwin, who's one of the brilliant people on our police department, she has something called the Platinum Rule, and it talks about treating people better than they ever expected you to treat them. And that's a pretty high level. So I appreciate the kind words that you talked about those officers.
Yeah. Yeah, and we recognize that not every officer and every interaction does their job well, and I know that there have been a lot of officers who haven't met the standard, and out they go, and it's a high standard, and then I watched it. One last thing I have to say about the academy is maybe we can get these videos out publicly, but or maybe they're private. I don't know. I saw some training videos of academy, you know, cadets or the officers in the academy going through training where they had to decide whether or not to intervene against their partner in an arrest or in any kind of a situation, and they were learning when when they need to intervene, usually in a case of excessive force, if that officer is starting to cross the line. And watching how they were trained to do that gave me a lot of confidence that they're actually practicing that. And I know that you have statistics that show that something like close to 80% of all of the excessive force complaints that are upheld are actually reported by another officer rather than by a resident.
Yeah, they're internally generated. So that means police officers or supervisors that see an issue and it's an internally generated complaint.
Yeah. And we know police officers have to use force because people generally don't want to get arrested, and they don't always, you know, agree to it. So it's a difficult thing to train.
We'll put that on our website also about the percentage of where we actually use force. It's a minutia. It's a very small amount.
Yeah. The less, the better. Yeah. Hopefully people will go on. Okay. And I have from Jeremy, who's actually with Annapolis Pride. What are the Anne Arundel County public safety agencies doing to ensure equitable and just treatment for transgender and non-binary community members?
Sure.
Let's start with police.
Sure, Jeremy, I appreciate that. So in the police department, we have an LGBTQ liaison. His name is Corporal Rob Hosh, and he deals specifically with that issue. Bias-based policing and implicit bias training is taught in our police academy. Our last police officers, once they finish the academy, every year they have to go back into in-service. It's required. Last year's in-service dealt with that LGBTQ bias-based police training. So not only do we have Rob, but we have that training, but we also have in the police department, there are things called general orders or index codes or rules and procedures. We have very explicit index codes on bias-free policing and hate bias incidents. Our county, not just the police department, but our county takes those issues extremely serious. I mean, we have sergeants and lieutenants. If there's an incident where a member of the LGBTQ community is involved in that, a sergeant has to respond, a lieutenant has to respond, and then Rob reaches out to those victims to make sure that in their eyes that they were treated fair and equitable. So that's something that our police department takes extremely seriously. We really do. And we love all members of the community. You'll hear me say that all the time. And I was brought up that way with my mom and dad, and that's taught here. It's emphasized, and our supervisors, our sergeants, lieutenants, and captains do a great job of communicating that issue. So I think we're way in front of the curve on most police departments on what we do in that particular area. So I appreciate that question, Jeremy.
Anybody got anything to add on that?
I'll just throw in, along with the procedural side of things, internally, I think all of us as leaders, I know from my position, really just being open with these conversations. These are what we consider courageous conversations that in the past years of the fire service nobody would ever discuss their sexuality at a kitchen table or over a cup of coffee. And for me leading by example, and wearing my Class A uniform and walking in the Pride Parade, being very proud of the members that we have in the department that are comfortable enough to share their personal lifestyle, and talk about their choices and why it's important to us. It's really important for me to be vocal about supporting that. And I've done that since I've been here because I genuinely feel that way, not because it's the right thing to do, but it's important to me. It's important to me that people feel comfortable in their work environment, and that we're not making policies that are explicitly saying he and she, and it doesn't dictate that because you're married that the marriage is between a man and a woman. Some of those small changes for me when I came in, changing documents that basically all said fire chief as a he and not a she. It's sometimes the little things. The policy is absolutely important, and Bill is talking about all the right things that we have in the training for the community, but we also need to make sure that we're looking at ourselves and we're changing some of those old school practices that just don't fit the members in my department, and I want them to feel like they all fit. There is so much value in having that level of diversity, and no matter what we're talking about.
And I just wanted to say too, following what the chiefs have said, one of the things we need to improve in our Office of Emergency Management is definitely community outreach. And that's a performance metric, a goal that I really stand firmly behind. And I have a great staff, not only who does the plans and everything, who truly believe that reaching out more into the community is really one of the most important steps emergency management can take.
The whole community, absolutely. Because Anne Arundel County is the best place for all. They're all muted and they're saying it, but it's for all, right?
For all.
For all, absolutely. We are running out of time, and I know some of you have meetings to get to. There are a few questions here that I can sort of jump through really quickly, because I think some of it we've covered. John is asking, I'd like to know that what you and your administration are going to do to support, I guess this is for me, support and guarantee our police department gets adequate funding to protect the citizens of Anne Arundel County. I mean, I guess look at the record. The last two budgets have been increased funding for public safety, not only in terms of pay, but in terms of hiring and numbers of officers trying to get. We were stuck at about 700 sworn officers in this county for far too long when we needed to be closer to 800. Now we are close to 800. Where we only added 10 positions last year, and then we couldn't add any more this year because of the money. But what was happening before was the positions were there, they weren't getting filled. And so now we're not only filling them, but we're over hiring because we know we need to, because we'll lose people. We've increased in the fire department too. We have a goal. We have a federal grant that's helping us with that this year is difficult because of a $63 million projected shortfall in revenue. And so we're having a little bit of a pause in all of that, but our commitment is still, and in detention as well, which is also an important part of public safety. And the sheriff's office has needs that we need to meet. So, but it's absolutely, I always say that public safety is really the fundamental obligation of government. I think government was created to protect its residents, in the early days, and so it continues to be our obligation. Will you require any civilian under consideration for a position on the proposed civilian review board to go on a certain number of ride-alongs with different officers and go through simulated training scenarios before they're allowed to pass judgment? This is from Lori. So civilian review board is something that we've been talking about doing in this county. Annapolis is doing the exact same, is having a process to figure out how it's basically community engagement. It's an extension of that. And absolutely, there is no way that we are going to have any group of people in Anne Arundel County involved in any kind of oversight or even engagement and providing, even if it were just recommendations, without training those folks in what the policies are and having folks on there who understand the challenges of being a police officer. So. Absolutely. And I think almost every civilian reviews type of organization around the country has some of that, but that would be absolutely essential. I don't think anybody disagrees there. How long is the training period between the start of classes and graduation, and how long before a graduate can complete probation and be on patrol? Doug?
Yes, sir.
Bill?
Yeah, good question. So our police academy will be 9 months in length, but whatever that equates to, 36 weeks. And that can extend. We have the great flexibility of extending that. We just extended it another 2 weeks. So going in, this will be a 9 months from the date they graduate. They are then on a 12-month probationary status, which means the chief of police, they're actually an at-will employee with exception of one of the issues under Leober. So that they go through, once they graduate, they go through a field training program with a field training officer of 240 hours. Where they're riding with an experienced police officer, and then they're cut loose. So it's the academy plus 12 months.
Right. Okay. And then, okay, Doug, same person on that question. What is the current retention percentage of our, do we have any kind of a number on retention for our police officers? And then the other part of his question, how many positions remain budgeted but unfilled for this fiscal year?
Yeah, so first of all, our authorized strength on the police department from the sworn is 776. Right now we are 4 or 5 below that, but with the overhire in the academy, sir, with your authorization and through the county itself, we're going to be able to do an overhire because we lose about 4.1 officers per month. A lot of that is through injuries, some is through retirement, and some is just folks leaving the police department. That's a very small percentage. It's about a 3% of that total group of people that are leaving that are just moving on to other careers. So our retention rate is really, really good, but we lose about 4 officers a month. So if we have a 9-month police academy, we lose 36 officers in that time frame. That's why the overhire, hence the overhire. But in our civilian staff, we're authorized 241, and right now we have 214. And I failed to mention that, and I have to give a big shout out to our civilian staff. Were it not for them, this police department wouldn't function, especially our 911 people, our 911, our 911 people in the communications center. Unbelievable folks, truly amazing. So I appreciate
the first responders.
That's exactly right. So we talked about that yesterday. Yes, sir.
Yeah. I've been in there, and that's what they tell me too. So before we close up, Chief Wolford, do you have any reports on how you're doing in terms of numbers and academy? And
we do, yeah. I can go through some of our demographics real quick, and for our academy, that's our career personnel. We do have strong numbers in our volunteer personnel when you kind of look at some of those stats. And so we have a class that'll be coming out shortly, the end of September. Some of them are in field training now. And then, like you said, we're on a little bit of pause based on, just trying to monetarily do our part with the havoc that COVID has brought to all of our budgets. So if we look at our female population, and this is kind of an overall setting of our numbers, not just that academy class, 10.1%. If we look at our African-American population, 8%. And then where we're trying to do the most work is our Hispanic population, which is just under 3%. I mean, we talked about some of that community outreach and how that's really difficult for us to do. We actually decided to create an event with some of the Hispanic Latino population down in South County. And we're going to pair COVID testing, because that community really needs additional COVID testing, with some of our smoke detector outreach, our recruitment, things like that. So we're trying to take, the lemons that we were given and really make some lemonade and make those kind of combined events and serve multiple things all at the same time. So again, for our demographics, when we look at the female demographic in the fire service, which is traditionally low, that national average is right around 4.5%. So if we look at our careers, 10.1% for females, 25% female population for our volunteers. So there's ways to make improvements, but we have certainly done improvements. I am incredibly impressed with that almost 50% coming into the police academy. That is definitely something to be proud of.
Yep. And let's finish with Preeti Emmerich over at Emergency Operations. Tell us how many staff you have and where you stand. I mean, if there's anybody, I know this is one of the things National Night Out is great for, is recruiting to these agencies, and that's one of the things that happens. So let's do a little bit of that. And I will say that when I came in, the one local organization actually commented when they looked at the numbers that Office of Emergency Management was there was very little diversity, and I think that's changed. So how are you guys doing in terms of total staff? Are you hiring? How big are you? How's it all going?
Yeah, so we are a small but mighty staff. I'm incredibly proud of all the work we're doing with our numbers. So currently we're about 9 staff members, and they do everything from the planning, the exercises and training, the community outreach, anything you throw at them, they're always willing to do it. I couldn't be prouder of our staff. Definitely we are hiring for a planner's position. Anybody's interested. We are definitely hiring for a few more positions, and our involvement, obviously, with the community, we would like our staff to reflect that. And as we move forward, we are definitely committed to that. And again, with community involvement, we have a great program in place, but that's something that we'd like to focus on and help grow.
Great. And I should note that one of the great things about emergency management is a lot of their budget is covered by grants. Federal,
welcome.
Especially.
You're welcome.
We like that because that means our taxpayers are not. And police and fire also get grants. Every department of government, we get money wherever we can get it, especially when it's not coming from our taxpayers. But our taxpayers obviously step up as well. And now we know why, because you all are doing great work and protecting everybody. And so let's wrap it up. Thank you. Thank you for your service, and thank your staffs for their service.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, folks. Bye.